It's funny how y'all over there trying to diagnose my child. He is okay. Pray for his little cold to go away. What y'all want to see the medicine take? No, none of your business. You feel me? Like, y'all just overly doing too much on this live. They say Chrisean finna be on the run because somebody was able to send pictures to the police department of Chrisean's junior genital parts, and they said he was bleeding from his diaper. She allegedly has not been taking him to his hernia surgeries, so they're not up to date as well. He also has severe diaper rash.
They say when the internet goes quiet, that's when something really bad is happening. And right now, the silence around Chrisean Rock feels louder than a police siren at 3 a.m. Because overnight, the timeline flipped, the whispers turned into alarm bells, and suddenly everyone is asking the same question in all caps. What is going on with Junior? This isn't a cute Instagram meltdown. This isn't a "she'll clear it up later" situation. This feels like the kind of chaos where phones start ringing, lawyers stop answering, and group chats get real quiet because when someone who lives for attention suddenly looks genuinely scared, people start leaning forward. And now Chrisean Rock, the same woman who shrugs off backlash like it's lint on a designer jacket, are allegedly begging for help. Not clout, not sympathy clicks. Help. That alone should tell you something has shifted. The internet is on fire. Timelines are split. And armchair detectives are working overtime like it's the season finale of a Netflix docu-series. And the wildest part is this entire situation makes the Kardashians look like amateurs playing house. Something leaked. Something escalated. And once you hear how fast this spiraled, you're going to understand why people are saying this isn't just drama anymore. This is panic at first. Nobody took it seriously. That's the ugly truth. When your entire public brand is chaos, people stop reacting to alarms. They assume every siren is just another remix. Chrisean Rock have spent years turning emotional explosions into content. So when whispers started bubbling about Junior's health, the internet shrugged like, here we go again, another episode, another meltdown, another clip farming sympathy and clicks. But then the pattern broke. And once the pattern breaks, everything changes. Instead of dramatic lies, there were gaps. Instead of confrontational posts, there was frantic energy bleeding through secondhand accounts. People claimed she wasn't ranting anymore. She was asking questions. And not the loud kind, the scared kind. That detail alone flipped the script because Chrisean doesn't ask. She declares. She doesn't plead. She performs. Allegedly. This time felt different. And when screenshots started floating around, not even confirmed ones, just whispered descriptions of messages, the temperature jumped 10 degrees. The tone wasn't feel bad for me. It was, I don't know what to do. That's when the internet lent in. Popcorn forgotten. Sarcasm paused. Suddenly, old footage resurfaced. Clips people ignored before were now dissected like forensic evidence. Every cough, every movement, every moment became suspicious. Viewers who once laughed started rewinding. And in true internet fashion, concern mutated into accusation in under 5 minutes. Because here's how this works. When a child is involved, the audience stops playing fair. Sympathy and suspicion become roommates, and neither one pays rent. People started asking why this didn't get addressed sooner, why explanations felt vague, why clarity never arrived on schedule, and worst of all, why the silence felt intentional. That's the part that fueled the fire, not proof, not facts. Silence. Silence is gasoline when you're already standing in smoke. And let's be clear, nobody has confirmed anything. No official statements, no verified medical reports. But that didn't slow the outrage train. In fact, it made it faster because speculation loves a vacuum, and the internet will fill empty space with the worst possible storyline every single time. Then came the reactions from people who know how this game works. Influencers who normally say neutral started using careful language, not jokes, not shade, but careful. That's when you know something feels off. When creators who thrive on drama suddenly sound like HR departments, it means they're worried about crossing a line. Behind the scenes, rumors claimed Chrisean was spiraling. Not crashing out publicly, but unraveling privately, and that distinction matters. One is performance, the other is panic. Allegedly, she wasn't trying to trend. She was trying to figure out next steps while the internet dragged her in. Real-timed. And, of course, the crowd wasn't gentle. It never is. Comment sections turned brutal. Half the audience demanded answers immediately, as if health crises came with press releases. The other half accused her of hiding something. Because if there's one thing the internet hates more than uncertainty, it's the feeling of being kept out of the loop. Then someone asked the question nobody wanted to say out loud. The one that instantly shifted the narrative from messy to dangerous: is someone stepping in? Once that question surfaced, everything escalated. Because now the story wasn't just about concern. It was about control, about intervention, about whether this situation had crossed the invisible line where spectators become whistleblowers. And that's when comparisons started flying. People dragged up past controversies, past choices, and past moments that suddenly looked worse under a harsher light. The same behavior that once got excused as wild was now being reframed as reckless. The same chaos that once entertained was now being interrogated. This is the part where public figures usually clap back. They post. They explain. They deflect.
Chrissy didn't.
And that silence hit harder than any rant ever could. Because when someone who lives loudly goes quiet, people don't assume peace. They assume fear. And just like that, the narrative slipped out of her hands. Reaction channels smelled blood, commentary pages, rewrote timelines. Even people who never cared before suddenly had opinions loaded and ready. The internet didn't wait for confirmation. It never does. It picked a direction and sprinted. Some framed her as overwhelmed. Others framed her as negligent. A few tried to inject reason, but reason doesn't trend. Rage does.
Tough.
By the end of the day, this wasn't just about Junior's health anymore. It was about Christian's credibility. About whether chaos finally caught up to her, about the weather. Living life like a highlight reel has consequences when real stakes show up.
Tough.
And the scariest part, this was only the beginning. Because once public concern crosses into public pressure, there's no rewind button. The spotlight doesn't turn off. It gets hotter.
Tough.
By the next morning, the internet wasn't just talking. It was deciding. And once the timeline decides, facts become optional and emotions become law. Overnight, this situation mutated from concern into a full-blown digital riot. Every platform had a different villain, a different theory, and a different verdict. All delivered by people who've never met Chrisean Rock, but somehow felt personally betrayed by her existence. Men's hit first. And not the funny kind. The uncomfortable ones. The kind where people hide behind humor to say things they'd never say. Out loud. Screenshots were edited, captions were weaponized, and suddenly everyone was a prosecutor with a Canva account. It was messy, loud, and morally confused, like a courtroom run by comment sections and caffeine. Then the reaction videos escalated. Creators who usually laugh through scandals suddenly dropped the jokes. They lowered their voices. They leant closer to the mic like they were delivering bad news. When drama channels stop being playful, you know the temperature has shifted. This wasn't tea anymore. This was why we might regret how we joked about this later. Celebrity adjacent chimed in. Without actually chiming in, you know the move. Vague posts, cryptic captions, prayers up energy with zero names attached. That's influencer code for I know more than I'm saying, and I don't want to get sued. Those posts did more damage than any accusation could because they implied something serious without confirming anything at all. And the public ate it up.
Tough.
Suddenly, everyone had a timeline. People stitched together months of clips like it was a true crime montage. Old jokes didn't land the same. Past behavior got reframed with a darker filter. The same moments that once felt chaotic now felt irresponsible under a microscope. It was like watching a highlight reel get turned into an indictment in real time. And let's talk about the comparisons because the internet loves a comparison more than accountability. People started dragging in every famous parent controversy from the last decade like they were assembling the Avengers. A bad judgment. Names that had nothing to do with this suddenly got pulled into the narrative just to raise the stakes. It was less about truth and more about spectacle. Meanwhile, Chrisean stayed quiet, and that silence became the loudest sound in the room.
Tough.
No clarification. No denial. No, you all are doing too much. Just absence. And absence online doesn't read as privacy. It reads as guilt, fear, or collapse depending on what angle you're pushing. The longer it stretched, the more the internet filled the blanks with worst-case scenarios wrapped in confidence. Then came the outrage phase. Not concerned, edge. That's when comments stop asking questions and start issuing demands. People wanted explanations on a deadline. They wanted accountability delivered like a same-day package. They wanted control over a situation they were never actually part of. Some went too far, way too far. Lines got crossed. And once lines get crossed, the conversation stops being about care and starts being about punishment. That's when the tone officially tipped into dangerous territory. At the same time, defenders popped up, and they weren't gentle either. They accused critics of exploiting fear for clicks. They called out hypocrisy. They reminded everyone how fast the internet loves to crucify women it once entertained. And just like that, the audience split into two angry camps, screaming past each other instead of listening. One side said this was a cry for help. The other said it was a pattern finally exposed. Neither side waited for facts because facts are boring. Drama is in single quotes. And in the background of all this noise, the actual concern kept getting lost. That's the ugliest irony. The louder people yelled, the less the original issue mattered. It became about optics, about branding, about who looked worse by association. Brands noticed. You could feel it. Collaborations quietly disappeared. Mentions slowed down. That unspoken influencer freeze crept in. The kind where nobody announces anything, but everyone pulls back at the same time. That's when reputational damage stops being theoretical and starts being financial. The mess kept rolling. Reaction thumbnails got darker. Titles got louder. Caps lock energy everywhere. And with each upload, the situation felt less controllable. Like watching a snowball turn into an avalanche while everyone argues about who pushed it. And through all of this, the biggest twist wasn't what people were saying. It was who wasn't. Certain voices that usually jump into chaos stayed silent. No jokes, no commentary, no shade. That kind of silence isn't accidental. It's strategic, and strategy usually means risk by the end of the week. This wasn't just a trending topic. It was a stain. Something that follows you. Something that changes how every future headline reads. Once your name gets tied to concern instead of chaos, there's no going back to fun mess. The audience doesn't let you. And the cruelest part, the internet already started preparing for the next update like it was a season premiere. People weren't hoping for resolution. They were waiting for escalation because online closure doesn't trend. And just when it seemed like the outrage might plateau, something shifted behind the scenes that made everything feel permanent. Because the aftermath doesn't hit online first, it hits in real life. And when real-life consequences start stacking up, the narrative stops being entertainment. And that's where the story is headed next. Because once reputations crack, relationships strain, and doors quietly close, the damage doesn't disappear when the trend dies. It lingers. And what came after the outrage made it clear the situation wasn't blowing over. The aftermath didn't announce itself with a headline. It crept in quietly, like a draft through a cracked door. The kind you don't notice until the room feels colder than it used to. That's how this hit. No sirens, no press conference, just a sudden shift in how people spoke, who returned calls, and which names stopped appearing together on timelines. Because once the outrage cycle burns out, something worse takes its place. Memory and memory online are selective, sharp, and permanent. People didn't forget the chaos. They refrained from it. What used to be written off as wild energy started getting labeled as red flags. What once felt entertaining now came with footnotes. Every feature clip carried the weight of context, and context is undefeated. Privately, the whispers grew louder. Not the messy kind meant for blogs, but the careful ones meant to protect reputations. Conversations shifted from what's going on to how close do we want to be. That's when you know the damage is real. When people don't argue about truth anymore, they argue about distance. And Chrisean felt it. You could tell by the way her presence changed. The confidence didn't disappear, but it fractured. Like someone trying to stand tall on shaky ground, she wasn't fighting the internet anymore. She was navigating it. And navigating is what you do when you know the tide isn't in your favor. Supporters stayed, but their tone softened. Defenders stopped shouting and started pleading for understanding. That's a pivot. It means even the loyal ones sense the gravity has shifted. They weren't trying to win arguments anymore. They were trying to slow the fall. Meanwhile, critics didn't back down. They doubled down, because when outrage doesn't get resolved, it calcifies. The narrative hardened into something people could carry forward. Screenshots got saved. Clips got bookmarked. The story stopped being about the moment and started being about the pattern, and patterns are dangerous. Patterns don't need proof. They just need repetition. Industry doors didn't slam shut. They quietly stayed closed. No announcements, no public statements, just a noticeable absence of opportunities that used to come easy. The silence from brands was louder than any cancellation could ever be, because cancellation fades being overlooked. Relationships took hits too. You could feel it in the distance between names that once moved together. People stopped tagging, stopped referencing, and stopped sharing space publicly. That's not drama. That's risk management. And through all of this, the internet never stopped watching. Because once an audience feels invested in a crisis, they don't want resolution. They want confirmation. They want the next chapter to justify how loud they were. Where in the last one, every appearance became a test. Every post got psychoanalyzed. Every smile was questioned. Was it forced? Was it real? Was it too soon? The internet doesn't allow recovery without commentary. Healing has to be performed, or it gets rejected. What made this situation especially brutal was the uncertainty. No clean ending, and no definitive moment where everyone could collectively exhale, just lingering concern mixed with exhaustion. That's the kind of narrative that never fully dies. It just waits. And Chrisean, whether she wanted to or not, became a symbol, not just of chaos, but of what happens when spectacle collides with seriousness. When entertainment crosses into territory the internet doesn't know how to laugh at anymore. This wasn't a downfall. It was a shift. And shifts are harder to recover from because they don't look dramatic. They look subtle. They show up in who's missing from your phone, not who's trending your name. The public moved on, like it always does. New scandals popped up. New villains took center stage. But this one stayed in the background, bookmarked in collective memory. The kind of story people bring up later and say, "Remember when that all went down?" And here's the part nobody wants to admit. This isn't over. Situations like this don't end. They pause. They resurface. They evolve. One update, one clip, and one comment can drag the whole thing back into daylight. Because once the internet decides a story matters, it doesn't need new information. It just needs time. Chrisean will keep moving. She always does. The spotlight won't disappear. It'll just change angles. But from here on out, every move will be measured against this moment. Fair or not, that's the price of living publicly in chaos. And the real cliffhanger isn't what happened. It's what happens next. Because the internet never forgets who it once worried about, and worry is a seed that doesn't die quietly. And this right here is why you can't blink online. One moment it's jokes and memes. The next moment the whole internet is holding its breath like it just watched a cliffhanger nobody asked for. This story didn't explode because people love drama. It exploded because when chaos stops being entertaining, everyone suddenly pretends they were always worried. Funny how that works. So now I want to hear from you. Do you think this is a real cry for help that spiraled out of control? Or did the internet do what it does best and turn concern into a full-scale digital firing squad? Drop your thoughts in the comments because, let's be honest, the comment section has been running investigations longer than some documentaries. And if this story had you leaning closer to the screen, smash that like button like it owes you money and is trying to duck you. Subscribe because scandals don't send calendar invites, and the next one is already warming up behind the scenes. This channel doesn't do sugarcoating. We break down the chaos. decode the internet meltdowns, and expose how fast a headline can flip a life upside down. While other pages chase clicks, we chase context. And sometimes that context is messier than anyone wants to admit. So hit that notification bell, because when the next update drops, and it will, you don't want to hear about it from someone who read half the story and screamed into a mic. This saga isn't over. It's just waiting for the next spark. Stay sharp, stay curious, stay watching. Because if the internet is a courtroom, Vibe Crave is where the verdicts get dissected aloud, honestly, and with zero filters. Hero fell.